Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Sitting across the console from me today, or maybe I should say it this way, sitting across the table from me today here in Nashville, Tennessee. We've been trying to get this guy on the show for a long time. Royce Taylor is here with us. Welcome to the show.
Bob, what a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this, and of course, the many months that we have discussed this sort of vaporized.
Yeah, well,
we've
had something getting in the way here between touring and then a little thing called the pandemic.
Yes.
But I'm glad you could finally make it to our stomping grounds today. Let's start at the very beginning. When did you actually start performing?
I was 15, almost 16 years old. I had no plans whatsoever to be a singer-performer.
Really?
That wasn't on my radar.
What was on your
radar?
radar?
Well, as a young child, I felt the call to ministry. And so I was, at that calling, my whole life changed. And the focus changed in school. And suddenly I knew that I'd finished high school. I was planning to go to Bible college and get a degree in pastoral ministry or whatever that is, and take a church and live happily ever after. But along the way, God had a different plan. Yeah. So it started out as an innocent buddy of mine said, hey, they're looking for some people to sing special music at the church. Would you be interested in doing something? Well, I was messing around with the guitar. I was playing a little guitar. I said, yeah, I could do that. So he said, hey, I know this other guy, he wants to sing too. And so we put a song together and sang special music for the church, and everybody liked it. So we put another song together and sang special music for the church. And then the folks from the Youth for Christ organization said, why don't you come and sing your 2 songs at our Youth for Christ rally? So we took it over there, and truly it's difficult for me to look at that first year schedule and realize that almost from the beginning we were being invited to sing somewhere. Come sing your songs. So it got to the point where I looked at the guys and I said, we need to learn more than 2 songs.
Yeah.
And it just grew from there, and it continued to grow and blossom to the point where the one guy went to college, so it left 2 of us. And the 2 of us were a duet for a little over a year. And then we met this guy who played piano, so we invited him to come and accompany us on piano. Dave had a bass, I had my guitar. We had 3 instruments, 2 voices. And this guy started singing a little 3rd part baritone with us. And so we said, cool. We became a trio. And that lasted for almost another year, and we met a guy who played the drums. And so he came in, and I heard him just messing around one night singing. I went, my gosh, Mark, you sound great. He goes, well, I've always liked to be a singer. So we plugged him in singing and moved our lead singer down to bass. He was much more comfortable as a bass singer. Suddenly we had a quartet going. And it just continued to blossom. We ended up making 16 LPs in our 12-year history.
What was the name of the group?
The Gospel Chords was the name we started with.
The Chords.
It became the Chords as we progressed. We thought that would sell a little better. We started doing corporate dates in the early 70s. Again, an agent heard us. He said, hey, you guys have a great sound. If you can add a few secular tunes to your mix, and I can make you some money doing corporate dates. So we started doing corporate dates. Then they started selling us at the county fair market and the local street fairs and that kind of. So the fairs and the corporate paid the bills, and then we could pretty much sing for churches.
When you started out singing, obviously we're going to talk about Elvis because that was a big influence in your life, or maybe just a little influence.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah.
Well, when you first started out, who was your inspiration? Who were you listening to?
Well, and that's an excellent question, because what we were drawing from were the LPs that our parents had in the house. So I was hearing Elvis. I was hearing Tennessee Ernie Ford. I was hearing groups then like the Weatherford Quartet.
I remember the Weatherford.
And the Blackwood Brothers, of course, the Blackwoods, and then the Statesmen and others who had albums. They were all kind of an amalgam of influence to us. We were picking, and I will say this: I've always been a lyric person, so I wanted to pick songs because of what they had to say, not always just simply because what they sounded like. And the other guys were more musical, so we really blended that well in our song selection, to the point where I don't know that we were necessarily doing what was popular even in our ranks, but we were picking songs that we could all relate to and deliver well. And I think that was probably part of the catalyst that propelled us so quickly. The other thing that was really a very important thing, now David, the singer that was left, that ended up being our lead singer and bass player, had a car accident right about this same beginning time, and it was a serious one. I mean, it was serious. He actually had the same vertebrae fracture that Christopher Reeve,
who played Superman,
played Superman, had, and he was in a form of traction. They didn't have the halo thing that they use now to immobilize the neck, but he actually had weights suspended from his head, screwed into his skull.
Oh, wow.
And he had to lay on his back for a period of weeks, keeping that neck from moving until it had healed enough, repaired enough that they weren't concerned. But there was a point in his early hospitalization that the possibility, if he moved wrong, he could be paralyzed from the waist down, never walk again. And when he was out of the hospital in very short amount of time, all things considered, from the injuries that he sustained, walking with a cane at first, or with a walker, with crutches, and with a cane, but even that was abbreviated. Once he got back on his feet, he was moving around, and that story of his healing was a testimony that worked in conjunction with my propensity to be a preacher. So we selected the songs. We had this great array of songs that we presented, and then we mixed this story of his healing and some of my preaching in the middle of it, and it just seemed to cause us to roll on quickly. And so I don't take credit for us, because I've actually heard early recordings of our singing, and I can't say that was the real reason people kept coming to hear us.
But you're a tenor.
I am.
Does something that just singing come natural to you, or did you have to take lessons?
Well, I didn't take lessons, and I do chuckle when I hear a lot of singers when they're giving their story. Well, when did you begin to sing? I started singing at 3 years old, standing on a footstool at my father's church. I didn't. But I did start singing and learning and listening to harmony for 2 reasons. I was raised in a Mennonite church, and this Mennonite church was a cappella. They didn't have instruments.
Old order Mennonite.
It was not seriously old order, but old enough that they still had not welcomed the piano into this particular.
I attended a few of those as a kid, so I know.
And the 4-part harmony was just natural. It was what everybody did. The women sang soprano and alto, and the men sang tenor and bass. And if you couldn't sing, then you sang the melody, but you weren't the prominent figure at that point. you were. It was expected that you were going to sing it. I thought everybody did that. I thought that was the way everybody did. So when my folks, we'd go on vacation, we'd be killing time in the car. Dad would start breaking into song. Mom would sing alto. I started singing a third part. And again, until I was older and was exposed to people who didn't do that, I thought everybody sang harmony. Just normal.
Wow.
That was just normal. Now, as far as being a schooled singer, I have to dip back and say something that is going to just sound completely crazy.
Oh, on this show, that's okay.
That's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
this show, it's
well,
okay.
For the audience sake, our Mennonite Church was not so restrictive that we didn't have television. So I grew up a child of 50s TV, and cartoons were one of my favorite things. Even to this day, I love cartoons. I love good.
What was your favorite cartoon?
Oh, my favorite cartoon. Oh, that's a good question because.
Mine was Bugs Bunny Road Runner.
Well, without question, and Tom and Jerry, of course, and Popeye. I listened to Popeye. But character voices were something that I picked up on as a kid and would do certain characters. Hey, boy, I'm going to fail now. I'm going to fail because I'm on the spot. If I had my routine together, I wouldn't fail. But anyway, I would Foghorn Leghorn and Yogi Bear and Boo Boo and Chicken Hawk and all that sort of thing. So I would do these character voices, and I realized when I started singing that I would listen to singers, and if I liked the sound that they sang, I tried to replicate it in my own singing. So I would listen to tenor singers that I thought I liked the way they did that, and so I would replicate that. And I don't know, 18, 19 years old maybe, I met a guy who was a voice coach, voice teacher. And he heard me sing. He says, man, he says, who gave you lessons? I said, nobody. He said, really? I said, yeah. I said, am I doing this right? He goes, let's see. So he literally placed my back against the wall of his dining room. And he put his hand at the small of my back, and he put the other hand on my diaphragm. He said, sing something. So I did. And he pushed on my diaphragm with his hand, and the voice didn't change much. And so he put me through a few other paces, and he looked at me and says, I don't know how you learned how to do this. He said, but just keep it up and you'll be fine.
Wow.
And I've actually, I don't take credit for this, but I've actually had people who've known me all my musical career say that I'm singing as well now as I ever did, even when I was younger. And I thank God for that.
That is so amazing because you hear a lot of the singers that I grew up with, and I'm not going to name names, but you hear them sing now, and they're in their 70s or their 80s, and they're a shadow of what they once were. So I get what you're saying. That's very cool.
Yeah, and I've not spared the horses. It's not like I've babied my voice across the years. If the need was there to belt a note, I've been known to do that. In the Elvis show, for example, How Great Thou Art, the big high C at the end, Elvis and the Elvis singers that follow now in his footsteps that want to do that song, it's going to repeat. There's going to be an encore, maybe 3. And I've got to hit that note. And so I told my peers, I said, look, I have 1 C a night, and I'm going to hit it 3 times. I said, that's my goal. I'm going to hit it 3 times.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for one of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Royce Taylor about Elvis and the Imperials and all those good stories.
Are you curious about Gordon Lightfoot's songwriting process, or what it was like working with Prince in the 80s? Have you ever given any thought to what goes into a golf course design or writing a book? I'm Steve Waxman, the host of The Creationist, a podcast about people who create. Each episode features a different creator sharing stories that I hope will inspire your own creativity. The Creationist is available now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, Royce Taylor is sitting across the table from us today. Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been a long time in coming. Let's talk about Elvis. Of course, you know, you worked with the Imperials, the Vogues, a lot of groups. How did that all get started?
Again, out of the gospel music, right around the 80s, I was a young married man. I had 3 children, and I wasn't touring at that time. My wife was very happy I wasn't touring.
Yeah.
That was a bone of contention. It really was. As a young married couple, and especially when the first child came along, she really did not like me picking up on a Wednesday and leaving town and coming back on Sunday night or
Well, it's what we call weekend warrior work, yeah.
So, and I always told, they said, we never have a weekend together. I said, I have weekends because I got to sing when other people have weekends. We have to sing when nobody else is working or we don't have an audience. That's just a fact of life.
It's the nature of our business.
It's what we must do. We must work when other people do not. And I've accepted that. I've accepted the fact that my weekends were generally Mondays and Tuesdays, and that's just the way it was. But it was tough. It was tough. And then when we had 2 more children, it was more. So I got off the road and went back to university and got a degree in communications, and then went right in for a master's degree in business because I thought, I'm a non-traditional student at this point. I don't want to do the entry-level radio or TV thing, so I'll get a business degree added on to that and have a little more of a selling point. So in the mid-'80s, I was doing a morning radio show and having a ball. It was one of those jobs where getting out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning to be on the air at 6 didn't bother me. I enjoyed that very much. Had a great following. It was a nice little regional FM radio station in Northeast Ohio, Western Pennsylvania. And it was a brand new station. I was the first one to sign the station on the air. So when we clicked the button that first morning and I signed on WKTX 96.7 FM, Royce, your voice in the morning, here it is, 6 o'clock, time to get moving type thing. And we had a Christian contemporary format. I really enjoyed that, and I had a good following, and I found out that we made the ratings book in the first quarter.
Wow.
Now, it was a minute little percentage, but we were there, which they tell me was unheard of, that no startup station or any startup station rarely made the book unless it was a conversion station, unless it was already established on the frequency and all they did was change the format. No, we were fresh. We were fresh on that frequency. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but I had a ball. I really enjoyed radio. The problem was, people don't know this, but radio doesn't pay that much.
It's kind of like podcasting.
Yeah.
Maybe not as bad as podcasting, but yeah, I get you.
Tough to raise 3 children
Yeah.
on a radio broadcaster's salary. And the station manager wanted me to be a salesman. So he says, well, after you get off the air, go out and sell. I said, I'm going to sell. I'm sorry. I said, listen, I said, here's what I'll do. I said, I will be a much stronger asset to you if you let me do production from your salespeople. I said, tell them to bring the contract to me. What are we trying to sell? What do they want? And I'll create something.
Were you the voiceover for those?
I was the voiceover and I did my character voices, and I did I employed all the things that I had packed in this brain of mine as a child and as a young singer, and had a run. And our buddy Tom Sabella here, by the way, Tom and I have been friends for 52 years.
I am so sorry.
No, he will remember because he lived in the area where our broadcast was very strong, and he used to listen to me as he drove to his own job in the morning back then. And he was probably one of my best cheerleaders of that time. And he remembers the commercials probably more than the radio, because he used to call me up after he'd get home from work and I was sitting in my house. He'd call me on the phone. He'd say, "How do you come up with this stuff?" I said, I don't know. I'm just having fun, just having ball with it. Now, let's get back to the Elvis thing. So we'll jump back into that. I did radio in the early 90s. I got a call from an agent friend of mine, said, "The Vogues are looking for a tenor. Would you like to go back on the road?" And I said, "Maybe. I'll talk to him."
Does it pay better than radio?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, it did. And so I auditioned for them. And the audition was amazing. They sent me 3 songs. They said, "These are the 3 songs we'll have you audition with." So I got to the audition. They said, "Need a music stand?" I said, "No." "Well, where are you going to put your words?" I said, "I don't have any words." "Oh, well, we want to do these 3 songs." I said, "I know." "Well, where's your cheat?" I said, "I don't need a cheat sheet. I learned the songs."
Wow.
And they said, "What?" I said, "Well, wasn't I supposed to learn these 3 songs?" Well, yeah, okay. All right. Let's start with 5 O'Clock World. So sang 5 O'Clock World, and they were like, "Holy cow, he learned the song." I said, well, let's do My Special Angel. So we did My Special Angel. They're like, "Oh, well, do you know Turn Around, Look at Me?" I said, "Well, was that on the list?" "Yeah, I know it." So at the end of it, they go, that was amazing. That was amazing. Do you want the job? So I went on the road with them, and that's how I got in with the Vogues. The original tenor singer wanted to come back. He had retired from his job. Now he could travel again. So he had the original lead singer and the original tenor singer, and both of them were then in the group. And that's all right. I backed out. I wanted to get back in gospel music. So I got a call then from what became the Stamps Quartet. Now, that was my introduction into the Elvis world, per se.
What year would that have been?
2002.
Okay.
In fact, when I joined the Stamps, I joined believing that we were just going to sing gospel music. And within 3 weeks, we were doing Elvis-related things, and I went, wow, okay, I didn't think about this being the case. And we went to Memphis to the Pyramid Arena, where they did the Elvis Big Screen Show 25th Anniversary Edition, where all of the still living Stamps members came, all of the still able Imperial members came, all of the Jordanaires that were still around came, the Sweet Inspirations, including Cissy Houston, Joe Gershio, the orchestra leader, and any musicians that had been part of the Elvis Las Vegas show. Now, if you're not familiar with the Big Screen Show, folks, this is the way it worked. They took the video of Elvis in Vegas and in Hawaii, the comeback, the Hawaii show, and some video footage from the comeback special too, 68 comeback special. They took that video and they remastered it 10 or 12 times to remove everything except Elvis's singing voice as much as physically possible. And then they put him on a screen singing. A click track in Ronnie Tutt, the drummer's ears. He would click off the song, the orchestra would come in on beat, and we would reproduce all of the staging live.
Amazing.
To him singing on a big screen in the middle of the stage above us. And that show went around the world, and I went with it. And I stood in that spot, first with the Stamps, and then later on with the Imperials, pinching myself saying, how in the world did I get here that James Burton is standing? I could poke him with my finger, and Joe Gershio was back here leading the orchestra. I could slap him if I wanted to. That's how close I was to all of that.
And wasn't James Burton, wasn't he the guy that would announce every night that Elvis had left the building?
No, that was Ed Hill.
Ed Hill, okay.
That was Ed Hill. Ed Hill was the baritone for the Stamps. And it didn't start out that way. There was another man, and forgive me, I cannot remember his name right now, but he was the merchandise manager at the time for Elvis. And Elvis, people forgive me. I know you'll know his name, but it's just escaped me for the moment. But it got to the point where he wanted to be back to oversee the merchandise sales when the show was over. And so by saying Elvis has left the building, then he had to fight his way through the crowd to get back. And by the time he got there, most of the people had dissipated.
Right.
He didn't like that. So he said to somebody, he said, "Who can do this? Who can do this?" And they all pointed at Ed Hill. He's got a nice voice. He'll do it. So when Elvis left the building and the music was winding down, Ed Hill took the mic and said, "Elvis has left the building. Thank you and good night."
Yeah. Now go home. We're going to take another break, get another word in for another one of our sponsors, and come back. We're going to have some more conversation here with, the man, the legend himself, Royce Taylor.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rule Book, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics, all written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, Royce Taylor sitting across the table from us. When I say legendary, because, man, you have seen it all. You've traveled all over the world. You have worked with some amazing artists, too.
I have.
The Righteous Brothers,
Yeah.
the Beach Boys, Frankie Avalon, a couple that I've worked with, Gary Puckett. Do you have a favorite out there that you liked more than, or was it just a big whirlwind romance?
Yeah, it's tough to say favorite, really, because every one of them had such a unique spot and influence in the music world that, when you hear "Woman, oh, woman, have you got cheating on your mind?" You know exactly who that is. Gary Puckett.
Yeah.
I worked with Peter Noon last January, and he is one phenomenal entertainer.
Still has it.
Still, I mean, home runs every night. Had the audience right where he wanted them, without question. Great entertainer. Enjoyed very much his show, to the point where I actually would come in the back of the auditorium and sit in the dark
And stay and watch it.
Yeah, stay and
Like
watch
any other night, when we get done with our shows, we go back to the hotel or get on the bus or whatever.
And he just, and I did it for a purpose. I said, I want to watch. This goes back to what I said earlier about being a child and listening to singers. And now I wanted to see what it was that he did to command that audience. What it was that he, on his name and reputation alone, can pack a house. Because he's witty. Is it the same show every night? Pretty much. Is it the same dialogue every night? Pretty much.
But he keeps it fresh.
But the way he delivers it, it sounds like it's the first time he ever said it. And I learned from that. and learn something from that. I've always been an eyes on the audience guy. I don't sing to the ceiling. I don't sing to the microphone. I don't sing to my instrument. I sing to the audience.
That's so important.
And even if, and most of the time this is the if, you can't see past the silhouettes on the front 2 rows because the rest of the auditorium is dark. I know there are heads out there. I know there are people out there. I will look at them. I will sing to them. I will smile to them. I will motion to them. And I've had people tell me, I was sitting at the back of the auditorium and I swear you were singing to me. Could you see me back there? Oh, yeah. Yeah, you were back there. I saw you back there. Because I want to sing to people. I don't sing to empty seats. I mean, if they're there, I'll sing to them, of course. But the point is, if we have an auditorium of, you know, an arena of 50,000 people, and I tell this story, this is an absolute fact. I did a show. I opened for the Gatlin brothers, Larry Gatlin, the Gatlin brothers, down in Florida, Tampa, Florida, at the Florida State Fairgrounds. Coliseum was filled with 11,000 people that night in the audience. And I walked out by myself in that little pin spotlight and sang my songs. And I'm in the middle of my song singing, and I'm going, you've got to be out of your mind. There's 11,000 people out there. And the next week, I sang for a campground of 15 people. So I say I've sung to my 10,000s and my 10s all within 2-week period.
Keeps us humble.
Yeah.
What's next?
I have an Elvis show. I'll let me just very quickly here, for time's sake, talk about something that was very unique to me. In 2012, I was with the Imperials, and the Vogues called and said, "Can you come back on the road? We've got some shows, and Hugh wants to retire again. He's tired of traveling." So I said, "Yeah, I can do that." I said, "Here's the deal. The Imperials get first choice of the dates." Now, the Imperials were not touring, but they were taking special invitation shows, and so we would get these bursts where we'd fly over to Europe and we'd do a burst of several shows and then come home. We'd go there do Christmas shows for 2 weeks and we'd come home. And we'd go back and do the TCB tour in January, February, and come home. And the Vogues weren't working oftentimes during those same time frames. So there was very little, in fact, no conflict for the longest time between the two groups. And then this gospel quartet out of Ohio said, "Our tenor singer is leaving us. We're looking for another one. Can you fill in?" So I said, "Sure, I can do that." I said, "However, the Vogues, or the Imperials and the Vogues get the choice of the dates, and so if they're busy, I can't be with you." "That's all right, that's all right. We just need you to help us out while we look for another guy." Well, there was very little conflict going on there, and the guy finally told me, he says, "Do you mind filling in and continue filling in while I keep looking?" And that lasted 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
So for the bulk of 2010 to 2018, I was singing with 3 different groups continuously. And I don't know anybody who did that. And these weren't just 3 little groups working around town. I mean, these were 3 heavy-duty touring groups.
How'd you keep that schedule straight?
God did it. I didn't do it. I'd write it in the book. I'd show up. I'd say, "Oh, I gotta go meet the Vogues this week," and he'd again. Tom would call me on the phone. "See, what part of the world are you in this week?" I'd say, "Well, right now I'm in Vienna, Austria." He goes, "Oh, geez, what time is it?" I said, "It's 3 o'clock in the morning. But that's okay."
But now you're working on...
I have a gospel music and Elvis Presley package that I put together, and this was birthed a year ago. Well, it was birthed in early 2019. Promoter friend from England called. He says, I need a gospel show for I have the largest Elvis festival in Europe, and this is a special year. We're going a full 10 days instead of 7. and I have a Sunday afternoon show I want of gospel music of Elvis Presley. He says, can you do something like this? And I said, yes, I can do that. And so initially he was asking if I could put some musicians together and some backup singers and so forth. And so I started lining all of that up, and they all fizzled. They all fizzled out. And I called David. I said, David, I'm in a little bit of a lurch here. I said, I've got a great program for you, but all my musicians and backup singers suddenly tell me they can't come. He says, it's all right, mate. Do it yourself. Bring your backing tracks. We'll find a way to make it work. And so I went over, and I knew the minute my foot hit the stage that it was going to work. I just knew it. And it was. It was perhaps the most successful solo concert I have ever experienced for myself. Everything just fell together. The song list worked out well. The banter was good. I had a big burly guy come up to me afterwards. Big guy. He said, mate, I got to talk to you. I said, how are you? He says, loved the show. Loved it, loved the show. You made me laugh. You made me cry. Nobody makes me cry. You made me think. Thank you.
Wow.
And I said, mission accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so from that, I said to David, where else do you think we can take this? He says, I've got all kinds of ideas. He says, but it's going to take a little while to get it plugged in. So let's consider 2020 being the date when all this will start. Now, the Vogues were invited then, right around the same time, to the Happy Together tour with the Turtles, the Association, the Cowsills, Mark Lindsay from Paul Revere's Raiders, and Chuck Negron from Three Dog Night, and us. And we were going to tour all last summer.
How did that work out?
Oh, that was going to be a great tour. I was going to be debt-free and everything. Yes.
Well, maybe 2021.
2021 is on the slate now, yes.
Knowing those guys that put that tour together, because I've worked with all those folks at Paradise, a great bunch of guys. They'll make it happen.
Yes.
You guys will be back out on the road. How can people find you?
LynnRoyceTaylor.com. I'm sorry, my first name is Lynn. I've avoided that as much as possible.
We're not going to hold it against you.
Well, good. And the reason is simple, because even to this very day, to this very week, Social Security Administration, I have a word for you. They sold my name to, it's Medicare enrollment time. And now I know you find it hard to believe looking at me, but I am
of that age.
Yeah. And I got a piece of mail the other day for Ms. Lynn R. Taylor. And that is why I have avoided the first name for as many years as I possibly can. But unfortunately, it's legal. And there's already a Royce Taylor around here who's a judge. There's another Royce Taylor who's a professional soccer player. And there's a couple of Royce Taylors who fathom themselves to be singers. And I couldn't get RoyceTaylor.com. So I had to use my first name. So it's LynnRoyceTaylor.com. I'm on Facebook, Lynn Royce Taylor, Instagram, Twitter, all of them. So you can find me. If you can't find me, you ain't looking.
Thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. It was great. Thank you.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.